What's life like at the cheaper end of the Volkswagen Amarok range, and what corners are cut to get a multi-purpose vehicle down to a price? Today we're going to answer those questions and more. I'm Glenn Butler, this is the Volkswagen Amarok Life, and you're watching Drive. Until now, much of the early Volkswagen Amarok review hype has focused on the fancier and more expensive Panamericana and Aventura grades, both of which are more than 80 grand on the road. Now, Volkswagen orchestrated it this way, saving the less impressive variants until after the initial coverage has died down. It's not uncommon for car companies to do this. They prioritise production of the more expensive and therefore more profitable variants first to milk impatient, cashed-up buyers. And that ensures that those eager beaver buyers get the rosiest possible picture. But now we're getting to the meat and two veg, the plainer variants in the Amarok range. This is the Volkswagen Amarok Life. It's one step above the entry-level core, and there are 3 variants above it. But don't think for a minute that that makes this a cheap car. As you're looking at it here, it is $63,577 drive away. That's a lot of money. Does it have enough to justify the price? Without the $1,000 paint job, the Amarok Life's $62,500 price strands it in no man's land between the Toyota Hilux SR and SR5, and between the Ford Ranger XLS and XLT. So it makes spec comparisons difficult because buyers can't compare apples with apples. If we look to the Australian market for guidance, in June, Amarok deliveries ranked 9th of 12 4x4 dual cabs, which suggests it's not a particularly popular choice. I first test drove the Amarok a couple of months back in Panamericana trim. I put it up against the Ford Ranger Sport and I was impressed. The Volkswagen Amarok is all Ford Ranger under the skin, but Volkswagen has given it a unique look and some interior changes to make it more than just a clone Ranger. Now, stepping down from the $80,000 Panamerica to the $64,000 Life means you lose a lot of features, but that's to be expected with a 25% price cut. Let me run you through a few of the exterior changes. For starters, this car is sitting on 17-inch alloy wheels. We've also lost the smart matrix LED headlights for passive LED headlights that can't shape the beam or see around corners. We've also got a much plainer front bumper, but at least we've retained front and rear parking sensors, which is kind of handy when you're driving a 5.4 metre vehicle. Now to the tray, and the first thing you need to know is that none of the Amaroks get that really cool little step that the Ranger does so you can get up into the back, but you can do it this way. What you do get is a very light opening tailgate, which is fantastic, and the ruler. You don't get a lifetime supply of nappies, which is what that looks like. What that actually is my book and magazine collection. I wanted to see what the Amarok rides like and drives like with about 300 kilograms in the tray. Now that we've got my highly scientific test weight out of the way, we can have a better look at the interior of the Amarok's tub. You can see straight away, naked metal, no spray-in liner, no drop-in liner whatsoever. So unless you're going to pay extra for those options, be prepared to scratch it up. Also, don't leave anything that gets damaged by water or rain because you don't get a tonneau cover whatsoever. Again, another option. What you do get is 6 tie-down points. You also get a couple of puddle lights on either side. What you also don't get is a 12-volt charger, which is kind of disappointing. Now, I also mentioned before we get the easy lift tailgate system, which is keyed to the central locking, which is fantastic, and all Amaroks come with a tow bar standard, which can tow up to 3,500 kilos, in addition to a 1,009 kilo payload. Okay, we're in the interior, and straight away the reminders that this car has been spec'd to a price rather than a standard are immediate. We have an old school ignition barrel that you need to put the key into and turn to start the car. We have cloth seats, seem to be the material of choice throughout. Manually adjustable seats, we've got a fore and aft movement. We've also got up and down, but we don't have any tilt adjustment on the seat base. Yeah, we do have a nice leather steering wheel, which is good, multifunction, and it has a very good range of adjustment, so you will get a good driving position. Beyond that, we have a smallish 8-inch digital display in here with limited use compared to some of the higher spec models in the range. Speaking of which, moving across to the center stack, again, we have that dumbed down version of what the more high-spec and expensive Amaroks get. You do have digital radio, you do have smartphone mirroring, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. What you don't get is satellite navigation. But I guess you can use your Android Auto or Apple CarPlay to mask that absence. Now, in a bit of a throwback to the 1990s, we don't have climate control. Instead, we've got old school air conditioning where you have to set the temperature and then set the fan speed you want, and then the car will do the rest. But if you get warm in here, you need to dial it down. What makes this even more challenging is that this is a ute. So as we find out, it's got a very firm ride, which means when you're trying to interact with the screen and adjust your settings, it's really frustrating. Now, if you think I'm being harsh, remember that this is a $64,000 car, and that increasingly people are buying these as family conveyances. Now, 64 grand to me does not say manual air conditioning. At least you still get electric windows and remote central locking. The windows all have one touch up and down too, which the equivalent Ford Ranger does not. We also have wireless phone charging, which you'd expect in a $64,000 car. The Amarok Life gets a 6-speaker sound system and the sound quality is decent. The test car has a trailer brake controller here, but that costs extra on all Amaroks, so ignore that. Kinda cheeky, don't you think? The tow bar is standard and the trailer brake controller costs extra? Feels to me like selling a TV and charging extra for the remote. Okay, we're into the back seats now, and getting in is no problem at all, even though the door opening is quite narrow. Side step makes life easy, stepping up into the seat. Once in here, fully grown adults are not really going to have a problem. I've got a decent amount of knee room in front of me, under seat foot room is good, headroom as you can see is generous above me, but what's not generous is the fit out in this second row. So obviously we've got cloth continuing from the front seats, makes a lot of sense, but we're missing a few creature comforts. First of all, I'm talking about air vents. There is no air vents back here, so you are totally reliant on the people in front being nice enough to let them blow through. You've also got no USB chargers whatsoever. We do have one 12-volt charger down there, but that is it. We have a couple of map pockets as well. We have an armrest, but again, this is a bugbear of mine with the Ford Ranger and the Amarok. The way to open the armrest involves pulling in an opposite direction to what actually happens when you open it. But still, at least you get an armrest and you get a couple of cup holders. You've also got in the door a decent sized bottle holder, but your bottle won't fit in there. So I guess it stays in the door. All right, enough of the tour. Let's get in the front seat and go for a drive. Now, given all the features that the Life does not have compared to other Amarok variants, it's no surprise to learn that the Life is actually one of the lightest in the Amarok range. At just over 2.24 tonnes, it's 80 kilos lighter than the Pan America. Now that has to make a difference to driving dynamics, but really it's the difference between having just a driver and passenger in the car. So unless you do it back to back, you're not really going to be able to pick it. Now the Volkswagen Amarok Life comes with a choice of just one engine. It's a 2-litre turbo diesel hooked up to a 10-speed automatic transmission. Now the engine has 500 Newton meters of torque, which is a decent amount, but I gotta say it's not as good as the previous generation powertrain, which was a ZF 8-speed, and it just had smarts about it that made it a much more cohesive match to the engine. This 10-speed just spends too much time hunting between gears, changing gears when you don't want it to, and just generally getting in the way. But back to the engine, this small 4-pot is actually a pretty decent donk. It has a fair amount of rumble and grumble, so you always know you're driving a diesel, but it's got more than enough pull for what most people would need. One area where it's not particularly refined is in the stop-start. It really does take time to stop and then to start again. And if you want to disable it like I do, you have to dive into the infotainment system, because Volkswagen buries far too much of what you need every day beyond that system. Now the Amarok has a 4-wheel drive system that can operate as rear-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, or, and this will make off-roaders happy, low-range 4-wheel drive. But before you get all excited about big desert trips, the tyres fitted to the Life are Continental highway terrains, so they're not off-road tyres as such. But what they will do is give you more grip on the bitumen, and I reckon that's probably a better outcome. Volkswagen claims a combined fuel economy of 7.2 litres per 100 kilometres, which is highly impressive if it was realistic. Our testing today has ended up around 9.4 litres per 100, which is, what's that, close to 30% more than the claim. And I don't think anything we've done today is out of the ordinary. Sure, we've got 350 kilograms of books and magazines in the back, but it's a ute. As for the ride quality, the Amarok is probably at the higher end of the ute class for refinement, but at the end of the day, it's still a ute, so it is a jouncy ride. And the extra 350 kilos I've put in the back haven't really ironed that out much at all, but it has taken the edge off performance. And one area I'd like more effort from is the brakes. The amount of pressure required to get meaningful retardation feels high compared to other utes I've driven, but perhaps this is something that you get used to over time. But back to that jouncy ride. I need to tell you about this because it really undermines every interaction that occupants have with the infotainment system. Unlike real buttons where you can kind of rest your finger on them before you push it, when it comes to a touch screen, the minute you touch it, it reacts. So when you're actually trying to adjust the air conditioning settings or something else that's quite fidgety, you almost need a sniper's level of focus and like hold your breath to make sure you get it right. More often than not, you don't. It's just a simple combination of a bouncy ride and a very particular touchscreen. Now let's talk safety systems, which is a strong suit of the Ford Ranger and on the more expensive Volkswagen Amarok variants. How much of what they get filters down to the less well-off owner though. ANCAP has awarded the Amarok 5 stars, so that's a good start, and it's got 9 airbags across the range, including a driver's knee and front center airbag. ABS, emergency brake assist, dynamic stability control, and trailer sway control are all standard. So is adaptive cruise control, speed sign recognition, and lane keeping assist. But unlike other Amaroks, the Life can't adjust your speed to match that of the road signs. Blind spot monitoring is fitted, as is rear traffic alert, so if you change lanes or back out into other cars, it will warn you. All right, time for a conclusion. Now, we set out at the start of this video to answer two very big questions. What is life like towards the bottom end of the Volkswagen Amarok range? And can you live without what Volkswagen has taken out of this car compared to its more expensive brothers? What I've discovered is Volkswagen has very deftly priced this car to make it much more appealing than the base model core. It really has a lot more than $4,000 extra value. These include a twin-turbo engine, 10-speed auto, rear disc brakes, body-coloured styling touches, remote locking tailgate with easy lift, and heated side mirrors with puddle lamps. Inside, you get carpet and floor mats, 6-speaker stereo, privacy glass, leather steering wheel and shifter, fabric elbow pads, and fabric centre console lid. You also get blind spot warning and rear cross traffic alert. The Life is also decent value compared to the equivalent Ranger and Hilux, even though it is a few grand dearer. But if there's one thing car companies are good at, it is enticing you to spend more than your budget. Now what that means is that more often than not, we end up buying what we can afford rather than what we really want. And in this uncertain time of interest rate rises and increasing cost of living, that's probably not a bad thing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do us a favour, give us a like. And if you've got some comments to share or opinions, do so in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to Drive already, do us a favour and hit that button and hit the notification bell so that when Drive drives new cars, you hear about it first.